Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Grantharaj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 1. Genealogical Table of the Daughters of Manu, Text 15. Atrehe Patni Anasuya Trin Jajne Suyashasaha Sutan Dattam Durvasasam Somam Atma Isha Brahma Sambhavan Atrehe Patyana Suyatrin Yajne Suyashasah Sutan Dattam Durvasasam Somam Atmesha Brahma Sambhavan Atre Patnyana Suyatrin Yajne Suyashasah Sutan Dattam Durvasasam Somam Atmesha Brahma Sambhavan Atre of Atri Muni, Patni, wife, Anasuya, named Anasuya, Treen, three, Jagnye, bore, Suyashasaha, very famous, Sutan, sons, Dattam, Dattatreya, Durvasasam, Durvasa, Somam, Soma, the moon god, Atma, the super soul, Isha, Lord Shiva, Brahma, Lord Brahma, Sambhavan, incarnations of. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Anasuya, the wife of Atri Muni, gave birth to three very famous sons, Soma, Dattatreya, and Durvasa, who are partial representations of Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma. Soma was a partial representation of Lord Brahma, Dattatreya was a partial representation of Lord Vishnu, and Durvasa was a partial representation of Lord Shiva. Purport.
In this verse, we find the words Atma Isha Brahma Sambhavan. Atma means the super soul or Vishnu. Isha means Lord Shiva. And Brahma means the four-headed Lord Brahma. The three sons born of Anasuya, Dattatreya, Durvasa, and Soma, were born as partial representations of these three demigods. Atma is not in the category of the demigods or living entities because he is Vishnu. Therefore, he is described as Vibhinamsha Bhutanam. The super soul, Vishnu, is the seed-giving father of all living entities, including Brahma and Lord Shiva. Another meaning of the word Atma may be accepted in this way. The principle who is the super soul in every Atma, or one may say, the soul of everyone, became manifested as Dattatreya, because the word Amsha, part and parcel, is used here. In Bhagavad Gita, the individual souls are also described as parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Super Soul. So why not accept that Dattatreya was one of those parts? Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are also described here as parts, so why not accept all of them as ordinary individual souls? The answer is that the manifestations of Vishnu and those of the ordinary living entities are certainly all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and no one is equal to him. But among the parts and parcels, there are different categories. In the Varaha Purana, it is nicely explained that some of the parts are Swamsha and some are Vibhinamsha. Vibhinamsha parts are called Jivas, and Swamsha parts are in the Vishnu category. In the Jiva category, the Vibhinamsha parts and parcels, there are also gradations. That is explained in the Vishnu Purana, where it is clearly stated that the individual parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord are subject to being covered by the external energy, called illusion or Maya. Such individual parts and parcels, who can travel to any part of the Lord's creation, are called Sarvagata and are suffering the pangs of material existence. They are proportionately freed from the coverings of ignorance under material existence according to different levels of work and under different influences of the modes of material nature. For example, the sufferings of jivas situated in the mode of goodness are less than those of jivas situated in the mode of ignorance. Pure Krishna consciousness, however, is the birthright of all living entities because every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. The consciousness of the Lord is also in the part and parcel, and according to the proportion to which that consciousness is cleared of material dirt, the living entities are differently situated. In the Vedanta Sutra, The living entities of different gradations are compared to candles or lamps with different candle power. For example, some electric bulbs have the power of 1000 candles, some have the power of 500 candles, some the power of 100 candles, some 50 candles, etc. But all electric bulbs have light. Light is present in every bulb, but the gradations of light are different. Similarly, there are gradations of Brahma. The Vishnu Shvamsha expansions of the Supreme Lord in different Vishnu forms are like lamps. Lord Shiva is also like a lamp, and the supreme candle power, or the 100% light, is Krishna. The Vishnu Tattva has 94%, the Shiva Tattva has 84%, Lord Brahma has 78%, and the living entities are also like Brahma, but in the conditioned state, their power is still more dim. There are gradations of Brahman, and no one can deny this fact. Therefore, the words Atmesha Brahma Sambhavan indicate that Dattatreya was directly part and parcel of Vishnu, whereas Durvasa and Soma were parts and parcels of Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahakanda Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahakanda Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Genealogical table of the daughters of Manu, that's the title of this chapter. The topic specifically under consideration now is the descendants of the daughters of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, who was the second daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. In the previous verses, we read about some other daughters and their descendants, the daughter Kala, who gave birth to Kashyapa and Purnima, and Purnima gave birth to some children, including Devakulya, who became the Ganga. In this verse, we hear about another daughter of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, whose name was Anasuya, and she was the wife of Atri Muni. And it is very remarkable to hear about the three children they had. All three were quite extraordinary, and how this came about will be revealed in the verses to follow. So I will not reveal that suspense now. I will, so that it induces you to come for the next few classes over this week. So you will know why it is that Atri Muni and Anasuya got these three exceptional children, these sons. And who were they? They were partial expansions of Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu. The partial expansion of Lord Vishnu was called Dattatreya. His name was Datta, the one who gives, and because he was the son of Atri Muni, so Atreya, so Dattatreya, that is the understanding of the word. He was a partial incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Then Soma was a partial incarnation of the moon god. And eventually Durvasa was the partial incarnation of Lord Shiva. So you have the Trinity being represented in your family as your children. Now that is something quite exceptional. So let's talk about the purport a little bit before we go on to talk about these three personalities. The principle of partial representations of the Supreme Absolute Truth is a very important concept to understand. Srila Prabhupada makes the important point here that there are gradations of Brahman. Brahman is the Absolute Truth. And what does it mean when there are gradations? As Prabhupada specifies, clarifies here, there are broadly speaking two gradations. Now technically there are many more, but these are just the two broad ones. One is called the Swansha, Swa Ansha, which means they are in the category of God, Vishnu Tattva. Like for example, Lord Ram, Lord Narasimha, Lord Narayan, Vishnu, etc. And then there are the Vibhinnangsha. Vibhinna means separated. The separated parts and parcels. So they are mostly the jivas. So jivas like us. But even amongst these different categories, there are gradations. For example, amongst the Swansha, those in the Vishnu category, there are gradations. There are gradations of Godhead. So even though the broad category is God, but still even within that broad category of God, there are gradations. How is that? In the first canto of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, we see this famous verse, Ete chansa kalapunsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Svayam Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Mridayanti Yuge Yuge. With reference to the three Purusha avatars, which means the Mahavishnu form, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu and Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, after speaking about these, it has been said that all these, Ete Cha, Ete means these Purusha avatars, Cha, Ansha, or Kala, so these different forms are all God. But Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, meaning that even though these are Bhagavan or God, but Krishna is himself God, which means that he is actually the origin of all these other forms of God. And we know the example of the candles, which Srila Prabhupada gives very frequently. If there are 50 candles, and there's one candle that lights up all the other candles, so there is light that is almost equal from all the candles, but still there is one candle that is the original candle that lights everything else. So similarly, Krishna is that original candle that lights all the other candles. What is more, as Srila Prabhupada mentions here, that different candles or different electric bulbs may have different degrees of illumination or voltage. One bulb may have an illumination of 100 candles, something of another bulb may have for 50 candles, another for 10 candles. But the common thing in all of them is that they have illumination. They have light. Similarly, all the different gradations, whether it is of Swansha or Vibhinangsha, they all have one thing in common. They are conscious. They have consciousness. For the Swansha, it is in one category. For the Vibhinansha, it is in a different category. Now, as far as the Swansha is concerned, in the purport to the verse that I just quoted, Srila Prabhupada mentions that the incarnations of the Lord, they represent different aspects of the Lord's powers according to the need of the situation. And they may represent different aspects also of the Lord's features. For example, Prabhupada mentions in the purport in that verse that Lord Narasimhadev or Parashuram represented a certain aspect of the Lord's powers when it comes to killing miscreants. Or you had Lord Ram and Dhanvantari, who represented the Lord's fame, who exhibited the Lord's power of potency of fame. You had, let us say, Nara Narayana Rishis, who exhibited the quality of renunciation. You had, let us say, the Tatreya and Kapila and Matsya and Kurma, who exhibited the power of knowledge. You had Narad Muni and Buddha and Varaha and so on, who exhibited the quality of restoring faith in the people at large. So in this way, the different incarnations of the Lord who manifest in this world, number one, they exhibit different potencies according to the need, and they also exhibit different aspects of the Lord's personality and qualities as per the need. Now, amongst the names that I mentioned, some are Swamsha and some are Vibhinangsha. For example, it is mentioned that Tatreya, elsewhere Prabhupada says, is in the Jiva category. He is in the Vibhinangsha category because separated parts and parcels like us, we are Jivas. Whereas some like Varaha, Matsya, Kurma, Ram, they are in the Swansha category, in the Vishnu category. That is called Vishnu Tattva, the God category. So all the candles in the God category are the same, but they represent different powers and aspects of the Lord's personality and qualities. So this is an important point to understand of how the different avatars are simultaneously one and different. Secondly, as far as the jivas are concerned, the jivas also exhibit different levels of consciousness. Even though compared to the Swansha, the jivas are very, very tiny, infinitesimal, but still even relatively amongst their members of their own category, there are gradations. As Prabhupada mentions here, for our jiva, who is in the material world in the mode of goodness, exhibits the higher level of consciousness compared to a jiva who is under the mode of ignorance, whose consciousness is covered over. So therefore we can see that there is consciousness everywhere amongst all living beings, whether Swansha or Vibhinangsha. But ultimately the source of all of them is Krishna. That is the purport of that verse. Ete chansa kalhapunsas Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. He is the source even of all the Bhagavan, the members of that Bhagavan category, the God, the God category. So, we see in this case as well, there is a mixture. There is the partial incarnation of Vishnu, and there is partial incarnation of Shiva, and partial incarnation of Brahma, moon god. So, as far as the three of them are concerned, let's discuss briefly one by one. Dattatreya. Dattatreya, the partial incarnation of Lord Vishnu, actually came as a philosopher, came as a teacher of Sankhya Yoga and Mystic Yoga. And it is said in other sections of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam that he spoke transcendental knowledge to Prahlad, to Alarka, to Yadu, to Haihaya, and so on. So he is known especially as a proponent or propagator of transcendental knowledge. There's some talking, please. We need to just... Yes. Therefore, Dattatraya's mission was to speak on transcendental knowledge. There's a very interesting episode about Dattatreya which is cited by Lord Krishna himself to Uddhava. And this appears in the 11th canto of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam in the celebrated Uddhava Gita. As you know, the Uddhava Gita was spoken by Krishna just before Krishna departed from this material world. Uddhava, having realized that Krishna was about to depart, came to him and wanted to leave with him. But Krishna said, no, although I would like to take you with me, but you have a service to do for me. You have to still spread Krishna consciousness here. So you go to Badrikashram and speak to the sages there. Probably because many of the sages there were following other processes of self-realization like Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga or something else. He wanted them to understand the principles of devotional service. So, but then Uddhava said, all right, I will do that, but before that, please give me some final instructions. So then that constitutes the Uddhava Gita. And as part of that Uddhava Gita, which spans 23 chapters in the 11th canto, Krishna speaks about this very interesting episode where the great king Yadu, who was his own forefather, he is wandering around and he sees this Avadhuta. Avadhuta means a renunciant who is quite unconventional. He doesn't follow normal or rather social norms, normally accepted social practices and customs, because he's completely living in the transcendental world. There are many transcendentalists who may internally be transcendental but externally conform to the mores and the modes and the norms of this world. So an Avadhuta is one who doesn't care for the external customs of the world. Of course, not caring for the customs of the world in itself are not a sufficient criterion to be called an Avadhuta. Otherwise all the hippies would have been called Avadhutas. But you have to be transcendently self-realized as well. So, Yadu was also not an ordinary person, the forefather of Krishna after all. And he understood that this person was a self-realized soul. Although he looked just like a crazy person, but he was definitely a self-realized person. So he went up to him and asked him, what have you learned? What are your realizations? And where have you learned all this from? Please enlighten me about this. So then this Avadhuta begins to speak. And he says that I have 24 gurus. And he speaks about his gurus. His gurus, it's not that he formally accepted some sage as his guru and the sage sat and gave him knowledge. It's not like that. These gurus were quite unconventional. One guru was the earth, the other was water, another was sky, another was fire, another was a mountain. So he had all these gurus from nature. So probably one of the earliest proponents of environmental education, the original environmentalist. And then he spoke about what he learned from all of them. And it is explained by our Acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Sridhar Swami, that this Avadhuta was actually Dattatreya, who is mentioned here. So in this way, Dattatreya gave nice instructions, very instructive. It's the topic of a nice seminar of 2 or 3 lectures on the 24 gurus. Not that we can also say, for me, I'll also just make earth my guru and I'll make the water and fire and the sky my guru. We can make them as Shikshna gurus, yes. We can learn many nice things from them. And we can learn from everywhere many nice things. But for us, we have to follow the system established in the scripture. So that's something about Dattatreya. As far as Soma is concerned, he is the partial incarnation of the moon god. There are 2 main Kshatriya dynasties in the universe. And one is called the Soma Vamsha. Vansha means dynasty, Soma means the moon. Or it's also called the Chandra Vansha. Chandra means moon. And the other dynasty is called the Surya Vansha, the dynasty that comes from Surya or the sun. The 2 most prominent incarnations of the Lord are Krishna and Ram. And Ram comes in which dynasty? Surya Vansha, the dynasty of the sun. And Krishna comes in which dynasty? Soma Vansha or the Chandra Vansha. So in this way, these 2 dynasties go on and they multiply and they have many branches and sub-branches. So Krishna, the Supreme Lord, can appear in any species of life even. As Kunti Maharani explains in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam in her prayers to Krishna, Janma karma cha vishvatman ajasya karturatmanaha tiryak nrishishuyadahasu tad atyanta vidambanam. Where she says, my dear Krishna, your appearances and activities within this world are truly bewildering, vidambanam. Why so? Because they are full of contradictions. How are they contradictions in the Lord's appearance and activities? Number 1, the contradiction in his appearance is that he is Aja, he is unborn. But he still appears in this world and he is born in this world. How can someone who is unborn be born? That's a contradiction. Similarly, he is called Akartuhu, one who doesn't need to do anything. But still he performs so many activities when he appears within this world. So it's a contradiction. And when he appears and performs activities, he does so in various species. Tiryak means animals. Nri means humans. Rishi means the sages. Yadahasu means the aquatics. So when the Supreme Lord appears, he can choose to appear in any of these different species. And even when he does appear in the human species, he can appear as a Brahmana, he can appear as a Kshatriya, as anything he likes. In all conditions, however, whichever the species in which the Lord appears, and even within the species, whatever segment of that species he chooses to appear in, he is still the Supreme Lord. He always remains the Supreme Lord. So he is not, for example, a Kshatriya or a Brahmana or a sage or a fish or a boar or a tortoise. In every case, he remains the Supreme Lord. So, whether the Lord appears in the Kshatriya Varna or in the Brahmana Varna, it's immaterial because he still remains the Supreme Lord. However, because he appears in a certain situation, he acts like the entities in that species. So when he's in a fish's body, then he swims like a fish. When he's half lion, then he roars like a lion. When he's in the body of a boar, he acts like a boar. When he's in the human form, he acts like a human. When he's as a Kshatriya, he acts like a Kshatriya. In Vrindavan, he was a Vaishya, so he was doing Vaishya activity of herding the cows. When he is in a Brahmana body, he acts like a Brahmana or a sage. When he's in a bird's body, like in a Hansa incarnation, he flies. So the Kshatriya incarnations of the Lord are broadly also in two categories. Sometimes in the Surya Vansha, sometimes in the Chandra Vansha. So Krishna appeared in the family, in the dynasty of the moon god. So therefore the moon god is blessed. He is blessed because the Lord chose to appear. The original Lord of all Lords chose to appear in his dynasty. Then there is Durvasa. Durvasa, as you all know, is a famous sage. And there are many, many stories associated with Durvasa. And generally, those stories pertain to his anger, or his potential anger, or his tendency to be very easily pleased and very easily annoyed. And because he was irascible by nature, he could get irritated very quickly. People were very cautious of him and very respectful. He was very touchy. He was a very difficult host. A guest, I beg your pardon. Very difficult guest. So those who were hosting him had to be super careful. Even the slightest discrepancy would make him fly into a rage. And then he could curse, and he could curse anything. But if he was pleased, then he could really give you tremendous blessings. So Durvasa, therefore, actually that quality he gets from Lord Shiva. Because Lord Shiva is called Ashutosh. Ashu means very quickly, Tosh means to get pleased. So Lord Shiva is also very easily pleased. All you have to do is to offer him some leaf from the Bilva tree, also called the Bale tree. Just offer leaves from that and he becomes very pleased. And he'll offer you anything. So Lord Shiva has partially appeared as Durvasa. So Durvasa has those qualities as well. Actually, in the Brahmanda Purana, there is a narration of how Lord Shiva once became enraged about something. And the demigods were all running helter-skelter in fear of Lord Shiva's wrath. And Parvati also declared that it was impossible to live with her husband anymore. Of course, they are eternally associated. In any case, there was no question of things like divorce and all that, as is very popular now. A little something happens and divorce. But that wasn't the case. So anyway, she complained that this was not the Lord Shiva whom she knew. So Lord Shiva realized that things had gone beyond the limit. So then he decided to shed his anger. And he deposited a portion of that in Anasuya, who was the wife of Atri. So when Anasuya gave birth, then the child also had some of that anger. Not the entire portion, because Shiva's anger can destroy the universe. So Durvasa, being a partial incarnation, had some of that, but that was enough. So Dattatreya had this, Durvasa had this nature. Does anyone know the meaning of the word Durvasa? Yes.
One who lives simply by smelling Durva grass.
One who lives simply by smearing Durva grass. Okay.
A person difficult to live with.
Yes. A person who is difficult to live with. Yes. Vas means to reside or live. Dur means difficult. But that's an interesting angle also of Durva grass. That's a holy grass. But actually Durvasa means one who is difficult to live with. I think we can see smiles in the face of everybody because immediately some names are popping to your mind of people you can see who would be difficult to get along with or difficult to live with. Yes. So he was difficult to live with because of this reason, because he would get angry like this. And when he got angry, you could not pacify him or control him. Then he would calm down after some time. There are many pastimes or stories associated with Durvasa, despite his being a mystic yogi and not considered as a great devotee of the Lord. Somehow he's everywhere in all the pastimes, even connected to the Lord or connected to the devotees of the Lord. He's there and to give a lesson, many lessons. So he's obviously a special soul. The most famous instance of Durvasa Muni, which is given in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, is his interaction with Ambarish Maharaj. And we've all heard of that, I'm sure. Where Ambarish Maharaj, the great devotee king, was performing the Ekadashi Vrata, and the time came for him to break the fast on the Dvadashi day. And just at that very moment, Durvasa Muni arrived, and he said, I'm going for a bath and coming back. And the idea is that when a guest comes, then you feed the guest first. Now that Durvasa Muni was away for a bath, now the time for breaking the fast had approached, and it was ending also. So Ambarish Maharaj had to break the fast. So at the same time he could not eat before his guest. So what to do? He knew that Durvasa Muni was angry by nature. If he did that, he would get angry. So he consulted his advisors and the Brahmanas, and they suggested a way out. They said, you just take a few drops of Rasamrita, water. It's as good as eating and not eating simultaneously. So you fulfilled your Ekadashi vow, at the same time you have not eaten anything, so your guest is not offended. But Durvasa Muni, by his mystic power, understood that he would take a sip to a few drops of water. So he became furious. And when he came back, he pulled out a hair from his head, struck it to the ground, and from that produced a fierce demon who started chasing Ambarish Maharaj, who tried to attack Ambarish Maharaj. Now so far the Lord had been witnessing all this, but the Lord Sudarshan Chakra, who is also a great devotee of the Lord, could not bear to see this attack on his pure devotee. So the Sudarshan Chakra flew off from the Lord's finger and came and destroyed that demon in no time. And Durvasa Muni was watching this in astonishment. And that astonishment turned into fear, because the Sudarshan Chakra now started approaching him. And he fled for his life. And the Sudarshan Chakra was chasing him. Durvasa Muni, being endowed with mystic power, didn't need to book any airline tickets to go from one place to another. He could just move at will. And he went all over the universe, everywhere, in this planet and that planet, to this demigod, that demigod, taking shelter. But everybody, when they saw the Sudarshan Chakra chasing him, they just said, wrong number, sorry. Please don't come here. Because if you are with us, along with you, we will also get burnt by the Sudarshan Chakra. He even did not find shelter with Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, even with Lord Vishnu. When you approached Lord Vishnu, Vishnu said, Aham bhakta paradhina hi yasvatantra iva dvija. He said, I am not independent, my dear Durvasa Muni. I am under the control of my devotees. Aham bhakta paradhina. Adhin means to be under the control of. So I am under the control of my devotees. And I am asvatantra. I am not independent. Sadhubhir grastaradayo bhaktir bhakta jana priyaha. My heart is controlled by the sadhus. And what to speak of the devotees? I am controlled even by the devotees of my devotees. That is my nature. Sadhavo hridayam mahyam sadhunam hridayam tvaham mad anyattena jananti tebhyo magmanagapi. He says that the sadhus they live in my heart, I live in their heart, they know nothing but me, and I know nothing but them. So he glorifies the great devotees of the Lord. And he says, Durvasa Muni, you have offended a great devotee, Ambarish Maharaj. The matter is beyond my control now. And who is saying this? The Supreme Lord. So even I cannot rectify the situation. The only way you can rectify it is to go back yourself to him, beg forgiveness from him, and when he forgives you, then the Sudarshan Chakra will leave automatically. And Durvasa Muni did that. And then Ambarish, being a devotee, naturally forgave him. A devotee doesn't bear rancor or grudge in his heart. Even if somebody has offended him or her, a devotee very easily forgives the other person. So this forgiveness is a very important quality of a devotee. A devotee doesn't carry all these things in his or her mind. So Ambarish Maharaj, being the exemplary devotee, was very embarrassed actually that a great mystic yogi and brahmana like Durvasa Muni was falling at his feet and begging forgiveness. So in great embarrassment, he immediately forgave him. And the Sudarshan Chakra then went back. And Durvasa Muni heaved a sigh of relief. And then he began to glorify the devotees of the Lord, as if he had 5 mouths. So here the Lord used Durvasa Muni as an instrument to exhibit or demonstrate to the world the glory of the devotees vis-a-vis those who are mystic yogis, who may be very powerful by earthly considerations, who may have material abilities, but they are nothing compared to the simple-hearted devotees of the Lord. Another famous story that emerges, that you've undoubtedly heard of, is the Akshaya Patra story. One time when the Pandavas were in exile and Durvasa Muni happened to visit Duryodhana in Hastinapur. And Duryodhana, being very wily and cunning, wanted to take advantage of Durvasa Muni's presence. He wanted to leverage Durvasa Muni's propensity for anger against his enemies, whom he perceived as his enemies, the Pandavas. And he served Durvasa Muni really nicely, knowing fully well that Durvasa Muni would be very pleased and ask him for a benediction. So then Duryodhana requested him, please go and give your mercy to my dear cousins who are suffering in the forest. As if he was very, very concerned about their plight. And he was concerned actually, but in a way that he didn't want them to come back. He wanted them to remain in the forest. So, and he said, please go in the afternoon. Yudhishthira Maharaj is known for his hospitality and he will feed you sumptuously. Now the catch here was that Durvasa Muni would never travel alone. He traveled with 10,000 disciples. And so he arrived at the doorstep of Yudhishthira Maharaj in the forest. He may have been living in a very small hut. And Yudhishthira Maharaj welcomed him. And naturally when a guest comes to your place, you offer some food. So he said, please have lunch with us. And Durvasa Muni said, of course I will have it. And now there's not one person, there's 4 people, 5, 10 people. It was 10,000 people they had to feed. And so how to feed 10,000 people in the forest? Not that you have a whole palace with a granary and treasury and so on. And moreover, the Akshaya Patra would not produce any food for the day. The Akshaya Patra was a vessel, Patra, where the food would be Akshaya or imperishable. It was a gift from the sun god to the Pandavas, to Draupadi. And the benediction was that this little vessel would produce unlimited quantities of food on a given day, till Draupadi had eaten. Once Draupadi ate, then for that day, this vessel would not produce any food. Now very cleverly, Duryodhana had arranged for Durvasa Muni to reach there after Draupadi had eaten. So now the Akshay Patra could not produce any food. So Yudhishthira Maharaj had sent away Durvasa Muni to take a bath. But there was a conference of the Pandavas, what to do now. Real crisis management. But even if you go to the forest and what can you get? Just a few fruits and not for 10,000 people. So then what would Draupadi do? She called out for Krishna. Krishna was in Dwarka. But for Krishna also, it doesn't matter. He also doesn't have to wait in a queue. So he just came along from Dwarka to the forest. They were in the Kamyavan in Braj, in Vrindavan at that time. So from Dwarka to Vrindavan maybe many hundreds of miles. But for Krishna it's nothing. So when Draupadi called out to Krishna, Krishna immediately arrived and said, Draupadi, so what have you in mind? You called me. He said, yes, I called you. He said, well, we'll discuss why you called me later, but first feed me something. See, that's exactly the problem. So the Akshay Patra is over, and now I have no food, and Durvasa Muni is here with 10,000 disciples. He said, don't worry, just give me some grains that may be left in the Akshay Patra. He says, nothing left. Please show me. So when Krishna saw it, he saw one grain inside. One grain. So he took that one grain and tasted it and said, this is the most delicious food I have ever tasted in my whole life. And he was satisfied. And as soon as Krishna tasted that grain, a strange thing happened. Durvasa Muni was standing up to his waist in the water in the river along with his 10,000 disciples chanting the Gayatri Mantra. And suddenly, these 10,001 individuals felt their bellies bloating as if they had eaten for 10 people each. And they could barely move. And the very prospect of eating any food was very repulsive. They could not even think of eating even one grain of food anymore. And they were all looking at each other, and the message was clear, what are we going to do now? Because Yudhishthira Maharaj is known as such a great king, a Raja Rishi, it will be an insult. He would have prepared food for all of us. We go there and we say we are full, we can't eat. It's going to be very awkward. Meanwhile, because Durvasa Muni was taking time, Yudhishthira Maharaj had sent Sahadev to find out. So when the call came, Durvasa Muni and his disciples fled from the scene. They went away. So again here, Durvasa Muni is being used as an instrument to glorify the devotees. You have mystic yoga versus bhakti yoga. The difference. There's also the case of Kunti from the Mahabharata. When Kunti was a maiden, she had not yet married, and Durvasa Muni had come to her house, her father's house, Kunti Bhoja. And she had served Durvasa Muni very nicely because Kunti Bhoja also was very aware of Durvasa Muni, so he had instructed everyone, especially his daughters, serve him nicely and keep him happy. So she had served Durvasa Muni so nicely that he offered her a benediction, and she said that please offer me a benediction that I can get a son from any demigod I desire. So he gave her mantras. You chant this mantra and you can invoke the presence of any demigod who will come, and you will get a child from that demigod. So that's how then she immediately thought of the sun god to test the mantra. And that is how Karna was born. And later this thing had to be invoked to get the Pandavas, actually. So anyway, that's another story. But we see that this mantra that Kunti Maharani chanted she obtained from Durvasa Muni. Another famous story in the Vedic culture is Shakuntala and Dushyanta. You heard this story? How many of you have heard of Shakuntala and Dushyanta? It's a famous story. Dushyanta was the king, and he was wandering around and he saw Shakuntala, who was the daughter of a sage, and he desired to marry her. And then he went back after their meeting. In the meanwhile, Durvasa Muni came to the ashram of her father. But by this time, Shakuntala had been infatuated with King Dushyanta. So even when Durvasa Muni came, she was sitting there wrapped in thoughts of the king. And she could not attend to Durvasa Muni. So Durvasa Muni was again enraged, and he understood the reason for this. So he cursed her that you have declined to serve me as a guest despite my coming to your doorstep, because your mind is engrossed in thoughts of somebody you love. So my curse to you will be that this person you love will forget you and will deny that he knows you. And that happened. So eventually the child was born, and then she went with her child to Dushyanta, and Dushyanta refused to acknowledge. He says, I don't remember. And that's a big story. And finally then Dushyanta accepted Shakuntala. And who was the son? What was his name? Bharat. So there are many famous Bharats in Vedic history. Who are the famous Bharats? Lord Ram's younger brother, Bharat. Then the son of Shakuntala and Dushyant, Bharat. And the son of Rishabdev, Bharat. So it is after the son of King Rishabdev, Bharat, that the land of India was known as Bharat. Right. So anyway, that was another story about Durvasa. And there is a very famous composition, literary composition in Sanskrit on this pastime by a famous poet. He's not a devotee. A famous poet called Kalidas. He wrote a composition on this. And finally, as far as Durvasa Muni is concerned, he one time visited Brajabhumi, Vrindavan, when Srimati Radharani was a very small girl, and she served him very nicely. And Durvasa Muni blessed her that you have cooked so nicely, I bless you that your cooking will be like nectar. And anybody who eats what you cook will never fall ill and will live a very long life. So Srimati Radharani got this blessing from Durvasa Muni. Now Mother Yashoda had heard about this, because naturally word spreads very quickly, especially in the villages. Of course now faster in Melbourne because of WhatsApp and Facebook, but it spread. So that is why she would make Radharani cook for Krishna, even as Krishna and Radharani were growing up. So Radharani would cook, and then Krishna would do it, because she was thinking about the welfare of her son, that he would not fall sick and he would live a very, very long life. So we have these mystic yogis who also come into Vrindavan pastimes, and so very hard to figure out. But suffice it to say that he is here as a partial representative of Lord Shiva, a partial incarnation of Lord Shiva. So these three, Soma, Dattatreya and Durvasa, were born to Atri Muni and Anasuya. And in the verses to follow, we are going to hear about how it is that these three personalities appeared as their sons. So we'll stop here. Are there any questions? Yes.
Maharaj, would you like to tell something about Sita Thakurani? Today is her appearance day. Eternal consort of
Yes, I think it was yesterday if I'm not mistaken. Today. Sita Thakurani is the consort of Advaita Acharya, as you know. So Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu and Lord Shiva combined. So when the Supreme Lord descends into the material world in different incarnations, their consorts usually appear with them also. So Sita Thakurani therefore is not an ordinary lady, inasmuch as Advaita Acharya is not an ordinary jiva. He is directly an incarnation of Mahavishnu. So we should understand his consort, Sita Thakurani, to also be his consort from the spiritual world, who has descended along with him to perform pastimes here. There are others, pastimes from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, which are there, but time does not permit us to get into that. Okay, any other?
Maybe one or two pastimes.
Well, let's some
Today
questions.
Sunday.
Yeah, but even though it's Sunday, one still feels hungry. Any questions? Yes.
Dakshina is the mother of the demigods, then how Aditi was the mother of the demigods?
Good question. How is?
How Dakshina is also mother of demigods as well as Aditi.
Kashyapa and Aditi.
Aditi is also mentioned as mother of demigods,
Huh?
and here the Dakshina, which came few verses before, she is also mentioned as
Oh, I see. Okay. So very perceptibly you have been hearing carefully. So, Dakshina, who was the daughter of Akuti and Prajapati Ruchi, and she was the wife of Yajna, she was the mother of 12 demigods called the Tushitas. At the same time, Aditi was also known as the mother of the demigods. How did they have two? Well, you see, amongst the demigods, there are different categories. There are the Tushitas, who were the sons of Dakshina. There were the Vasus, there are the Rudras, there are the Adityas, different categories of demigods. So those demigods who are the sons of Aditi, they are called Adityas. So the Adityas are mainly the chief demigods. So you have the sun god and Indra, they're all sons of Aditi. One final question. Yes.
Maharaj, you mentioned Durvasa Muni is a mystic yogi, and it's different from Amrish Maharaj, who is a pure devotee of the Lord. So what mantras do mystic yogis chant, or what is their meditation, focus of meditation?
What is the mantras and meditation of Durvasa Muni? Well, mystic yogis have their own process of meditation, as you know. And because he was a meditator or mystic yogi, he is not considered a great devotee. But as per the mystic yoga process, dhyana vasthita tadgatena manasa pashyanti yam yoginaha. The mystic yogi is supposed to meditate on the Supreme Lord within the heart. That is how it is supposed to be. But he was a Brahmana, he was a sage, a mystic. Generally what happens with mystic yogis is that they lose focus upon the actual object of their meditation, that is Lord Vishnu. And they become preoccupied with so many other things, including their own mystic powers. So the stories concerning the Durvasa Muni are especially instructive because they are comparative. And they tell us how important and exalted Bhakti Yoga is in comparison to all these other processes. Okay, so we will stop here now. Okay, one last question.
Why does Krishna surrender to Radharani?
Why does Krishna surrender to Radharani? Okay. And that's a very deep question. All of you know that at home. Who is the boss? Everybody knows. You'll find out when you grow up. Right? Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanande.